So when I look at your record, something is pretty interesting, and I'd like you to comment on it for me. Out of all the formats that you've played, your lowest batting average is in first class cricket, right?
Yeah.
Still a lot higher than a lot of people. Why was that? What was so difficult in the transition between white ball cricket and 4-day cricket?
Yeah, this is one you can probably tell I reflect and like to think, and I've always been a bit of a note taker. And if you looked at my notes from 2015 and 2016, you'd be amazed as a coach just how scrambled they are. I think white ball cricket, I was just a little bit more confident in myself. When I went to play first class cricket for Durham, it's probably no coincidence that my best performance for them was my debut, because I had no expectations on myself or no past failures to think about. And I'd come back, the season I played the most, I'd gone to the World Cup, the 2015 World Cup with Scotland. I think I'd played 10 ODIs. I'd only got 50 runs that year. I'd come back into a Durham side where I was struggling in red ball cricket. And I just think the right decision would have been to actually go to the coach and go, look, I'm struggling a bit here. I either need to not play, or we need to do some work, because the way I dealt with it, and looking back, I know this was wrong. My default was just go and work harder. So in the morning of a red ball game, I'd be one of the first in the nets. I'd have the coach side arming as fast as I could get him to side arm me. I'd be hitting hundreds of balls. I'd be sweating. I'd be just mentally drained and tired before going and playing. This is the way I've reflected and looked back at it. I also probably had a slight technical issue against the ball nipping back, which we then dealt with once I got out of the side, which then probably led on to me becoming a better player. But when it's just game after game after game and you're trying to prove yourself, it takes somebody more confident in their own skin than me to actually say, look, I need to step back here. And I wish I'd been able to do that, because after I played my last game for Durham, I didn't play any more red ball county cricket, and I wish I'd been able to go in with the better mindset that I've got now, because I learned about myself, I learned about training, I learned about preparation. Now, again, just from talking to somebody, Scott Borthwick, brilliant left-handed batter at Surrey now. So I'd be in the nets and I'd be sweating. I'd have to come back after training in the morning of a game, have a shower, put your whites on, and he'd walk over with a cup of coffee, his pads, without any pads, just with his bat and his gloves. He'd have a few throwdowns. He'd get himself nice and confident about scoring, where I was too worried about defending and trying to be as intense as possible, where he was just trying to be as relaxed as he could and know that if the bowler bowled a bad ball, that he could score, because he'd done the hard work previously.
Some of those innings that I've seen you play in white ball cricket, and it's obviously I've seen the highlights where you've been very successful. It seems as if there's a much more free mindset in those innings. Do you think that was just experience and time and place, or was that because it was white ball cricket and there's a bit more freedom for batters?
But probably a little bit both. I think you learn from failures. I think the majority of my better batting has come after I've left Durham, when I got released, because I was able to reflect on what went wrong. And it certainly gives you a freedom to go and play. Kyle Coetzer, the Scotland captain, he's very much of, okay, if we're not enjoying it, then we're doing something slightly wrong. We want to enjoy our cricket, because if you're enjoying it, then it's easier to make a more positive decision, probably in our opinion. And in white ball cricket, it's nearly always about taking a slightly more positive option, and probably not having the consequences of doing that in red ball cricket if I couldn't get into the mindset of red ball cricket of playing free shots. Whereas in white ball cricket, it's an expectation you have to go and do it. Otherwise, you're not going to win many games, are you? So I think that'd be something that I'd look to try and change. And certainly the mindset of putting pressure back on a bowler. I think no matter what level you play at, if you just let a bowler bowl at you, then eventually it's the pressure of a one-day game is going to get to you, that you're going to just have to play a rash shot, or you're just going to end up losing the game because you don't get enough runs.
Well, you said he's been setting himself. That one was back of a length, just had to hold back in his crease, and enough to be able to create some width. Yeah, quick hands, pretty full that.
Oh, what an effort. Sanderson almost pulled off a screamer. And that's been played beautifully. It's a really good shot from MacLeod. Oh, that's gone miles. It's out of here. Look out on the balloon.
It doesn't matter where you put the cover fielder if you hit it like that. Have a look at that. He's on one leg when he hits that shot. He just swats it over extra cover. Oh, this is so good from Oh, he hits his 100. What a knock this has been. This boy loves playing on TV.
A couple more from me and then I'll hand back over to Neil. You've shared quite a few dressing rooms. I'm sure we spoke about Gareth earlier, quite a lot of characters. Can you tell me or share with us who would be the biggest joker you've shared a dressing room with? Who would you want to sit beside when you're not in a particularly great mood?
There's a couple of guys in the Scotland side that I quite like. Young guy, left arm spinner, Mark Watt. He always finds a way of bringing it back to reality, whether it's as simple as coming in and he might do it in a way that he'll actually take the mick out of me. He'll come and say, well, that wasn't very good today, and like bring me a coffee and that just gets you out your mood. Yeah. Most dressing rooms have people in them who you probably don't want to sit next to because they're joking all the time and you want to have your own little space.
What are you like in the dressing room?
I'm fairly quiet. I try and find a corner. Normally sit next to a couple of the same guys. A little bit suspicious in that if I've had success somewhere, a little bit like I said earlier, if I've had success somewhere, I'll want to sit in the same place. Yeah. But then I'll also kind of cheat and lie to myself that if I haven't had success, I want to sit in the same place anyway because it can have no impact. So it's these mind games that you play with yourself, and I think up and down the country, from first class dressing rooms to club dressing rooms, people will be having the same thoughts.
And you spoke earlier about the influence Alan Donald had on you and Ashley Giles and those guys. In terms of players you've played with in the same dressing room, who do you think would have been your, not necessarily someone you learned the most from, but you looked up to and said, yes, this is probably the best professional bowler or professional batsman you've played with, and for whatever reason?
I think one of the best cricketers, Ben Stokes, his work ethic was superb. Anytime you see him in the gym, bowling, batting, it was 100%. What you see is a little bit what you get. The cricketer he's developed, he's worked incredibly hard for that. I think the player who's probably had the most influence on me, who I've mentioned already, has probably been Kyle, the Scotland captain. Just to trust that he's put in my game. I'm probably had higher expectations of me than anybody I've worked with, which is some of the expectations might be quite hard to achieve, the hundreds and the runs and the manner he'd want you to score them, but to have that put upon you, there's got to be a certain amount of trust that he thinks that I could do that, and he'd push my game just a little bit further. And I think that potentially could have been something that I missed in a county dressing room. That was allowed. You're allowed to just look after your own game. You're probably not pushed as much. And I think expectations are quite a good thing, because it allows you to work towards something. It allows you to have a goal of what you're trying to achieve. Doesn't mean you have to tell everybody. It doesn't mean that you have to set yourself goals of scoring X amount of runs a year. But it can be as a goal of, okay, my mind's going to be clear. I'm going to prepare the same way for a season, and I'm going to trust in the game that I'm going with, as opposed to changing all the time.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that, Neil. Jump back in when you're ready. I'll keep going.
Yeah, I know. When Simon and I were sort of planning how we were going to do this as a tag team, it made a lot of sense, I think, for him to talk to you about performance cricket and professional cricket and the dressing room, given that he's played at sort of similar standards, and I was really happy to give that over to him. But the one thing I insisted on was that I got to ask you about the England game in 2018. So I'm taking back over to do that now, asserting my rights. I'm going to start, just going to jump right in and say you scored 140 not out. You won man of the match in Scotland's first ever ODI win over England, and against an England side that was at the time and still is ranked #1 in the world in the format, against a bunch of guys playing for their position at a home World Cup in less than a year's time. So they were playing. And that ultimately contained 8 of the players that would go on to lift the World Cup trophy.
You to continue. Swept and swept hard.
It's gone leg side, and he's got enough of it, that is for certain. And now the big sweep comes. What a shot that is. Oh, that tells you how good a surface it is.
Belter of a shot. Nobody there. That's safe too, all the way, 6 more.
This is good batting, 4 more. Club leg side, the old-fashioned cow corner.
So to take it right back to the start of the interview, when you were a young kid in your bedroom in Scotland, or going down the club in Scotland, or going to the nets, did you ever dream of a moment like that? Or was that something beyond your wildest dreams?
I think you dream of it, don't you? You do. You dream of winning World Cups. It's still not likely to happen, but you dream about them. It's probably one of those games that we'd been building up and playing cricket in a way that allowed us to think we'd have a chance of winning that game, which is probably different to the majority of the Scotland sides I'd played in. I think it'd gone from being a dream possibly in 2010, 2011, that would have been a dream to beat them there, to 2018, where we knew that we could play a game well enough that we could challenge them. It doesn't mean they turned up and we thought, okay, we were going to beat them today. We were very much in a mindset of, okay, we're going to focus on ourselves, and if we play well enough, then we can put on a game that challenges them if they play well.
Yeah, it's really interesting you talk about that belief in winning, because I've enjoyed preparing to talk to you today and sort of pretending to be a journalist. I've watched some interviews you did and stuff back in the past. And one comment that really struck me was in an interview in 2011, as you mentioned, you were about to play Sri Lanka in a one-day game. And an interviewer asked you about it, and you described it as it was going to be a day to enjoy. So it was something that was going to be an experience. There was a great Sri Lanka side, the Sangakkara and Jayawardena and stuff, and they'd just been to a few World Cup finals, I think you mentioned, in a row. And you described it as a day to enjoy. That Scotland team in 2018 that beat England, it wasn't there to have a day to enjoy. It was a Scotland team that turned up to win. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you go through the process of changing from being the Scotland side that's there to enjoy itself to the Scotland side that's there to win.
Yeah, I got a second ball duck that day. I ducked 2 Malinga Yorkers in a row. What a bowler. The process, it started, like I said, it was quite a long process. In 2016, we sat down as a squad, and the coach at the time, Grant Bradburn, he had a list of games, and I think there was between 8 and 10 games that we'd lost over the last 2 years or 3 years that we should have won. A couple of the big games would have been Afghanistan in the 2015 World Cup. I think we had them 8 down, needing, the memory of cricket games is pretty bad, but I think we had them 8 down, needing 60 or 70, and we let them win it. An opportunity slipped through. Bangladesh, we put 320 on the board or something. Kyle got an amazing 156 in the World Cup. We let them chase it down fairly easily, and he was quite forthright, Grant, at the time, saying, okay, we can keep doing what we're doing. We can keep being a decent team who wins a game every now and then, or we can start to challenge ourselves differently. Training changed. They became a little bit more competitive. We probably trained a little bit smarter, which is quite, because facilities in Scotland are a little bit dependent on the weather, whether you're on a dodgy Astro or whether the weather's good enough that you can get out onto Middle to train. So we probably had to train a little bit differently. And we started reviewing our games a little bit more in small groups, and it became a little bit more ownership of the players reviewing each other, which I think was quite a powerful way of doing it. And it became quite open, and that if you'd seen somebody not performing or somebody not training or somebody not doing it, we started calling each other out, and gradually the behaviours that we showed in training started to creep into games, and we started winning games that we probably had lost before. We beat Sri Lanka down in Beckenham quite convincingly. The year after, we beat Zimbabwe in Scotland. Then we went to I think it was 2018, we went to Zimbabwe for the World Cup qualifiers, where we came close to qualifying, and we probably should have qualified. So it was building up, and a lot of it was probably just expecting a little bit more of ourselves. And there was a phrase we used that we didn't want teams to come up and play badly against us. If they came up and played badly, then that's fine. But we had to train, and we had to find a way of winning games of cricket if the other team played well. So if England came and played well, which I think they did in that day, how are we going to become good enough for Scotland to play well enough to beat them if they play well? Which is quite a hard mindset to get yourself into. Instead of expecting teams and hoping teams play badly, actually, no, we want you to come to Scotland. We want you to play well, and you know what? We're going to try and beat you if you play well. And what does our game look like to do that? You look at some of the best teams in the world. They were scoring 300s, 330 plus. So we, as a group of batters, we sat down. We were in Dubai before a trip, and we said, okay, how are we going to become a 350 plus team? Which, as a Scottish bat, it's not something we'd probably ever explored before. And consequently, what happened is we actually started scoring 300 more, because we had game plans in place to score 350. Knowing that if we got it right one day, then we'd have games where we got over those totals. I think that was quite a big change. Just wanting to play better than the other team, as simple as that sounds. It was quite powerful, and certainly was to me.
Yeah, and I know a Scottish team never needs motivation to go and play against England, or I'm sure that you didn't. But the sort of extra context to that game was that you mentioned just at the start of the interview, the 10-team World Cup that had been put in place in England that was going to come the following year. That I think the English Cricket Board had supported that. They'd supported it being a 10-team World Cup. You sort of just missed out on qualifying for that in the most heartbreaking circumstances, probably to the relief of the Jamaicans on the call, but not to anybody else, or certainly not the Scottish fans. I wonder, did that give you a little bit of extra motivation that day, or is that the sort of an unhealthy well for motivation that someone like me would go to that players like you wouldn't?
I think there is that. I think after it just gives you that motivation just to keep trying to improve. I'd be lying if I said I was out in the middle thinking I'm going to show the ICC the 10-team world. I mean, that's never going through your mind. What it did do was bring up the conversation again. I mean, to me the ICC have done a good job. They've got associate cricket in a place where it's probably as strong as it's ever been. But we were almost in a position where if it hadn't rained and we hadn't had the dodgy LBW decision, we would have had a World Cup that didn't have Afghanistan, it didn't have the West Indies. Can you imagine a World Cup without the West Indies? It just doesn't make sense. And I'm not just saying that because there's a few guys from Barbados. I'm saying it because it doesn't sit right with me to not have Zimbabwe, to not have Ireland, to not have Afghanistan, to have teams who have qualified. It just becomes a bit of a Champions Trophy, and certainly to grow the game in those countries. I mean, it just doesn't. How are we going to inspire the next generation of players if they're not seeing them play against some of the best players in the world? And especially since it was in England, it would have been nice to have had another World Cup there. But no, certainly not on the day. I don't think I was ever thinking, okay, I want to show them. But it's just a nice reminder that there is more cricket out there than the big three who basically run the game.
So tell us, if it wasn't, I'm gonna show the ICC. What was going through your mind when you were hitting that 140 not out?
Honestly, it doesn't. I don't think your game plan changes much whether you're playing club cricket or you're playing a higher up level. I think the process and the skills are very similar. It's just doing it for a longer time against a better class of bowler. Probably it's probably the only difference is they probably don't bowl as many bad balls. So you've got to maybe manufacture more balls to score off than you might have to in club cricket because you can wait a little bit longer. But it was probably, we knew it was a good wicket, we knew it was a small boundary, so it was okay, what is the best option to score boundaries, because it was a day where boundaries were vital. And I used to sweep a lot, so probably the clearest mindset I had was, okay, if it's in the area I want to sweep, I'm just going to sweep. The rest of it's probably just reacting.
And it's interesting, your comments a couple of questions ago, you mentioned sort of the aim being score 350 plus and the aim being to beat teams that play well. Two things that definitely happened that day. So you'd put on 371, I think, for 5 on the back of especially of your performance. And then I wonder when Johnny Bairstow came out and hit 100 off about 50 balls or whatever it was, did you feel like, oh, here we go again? Did the heads go down at all, or did you guys stick to the task as a group pretty well?
Well, I think that's where the biggest mindset change was that we were able to hang in those games longer. I mean, at one point they could have won it in 30 or 40 overs. It was ridiculous. Johnny Bairstow, the way he played, I mean, he hit the ball so clean, so hard, and it was something actually that we went away and talked about and thought, okay, what was he doing? How can we get a little bit closer to that level? But I don't think the belief ever went, and I think that was evident from the way when we got the first wicket and we started creating opportunities. You could tell that it was a Scotland team and a cricket team who were just focused on the game and just getting the small things right to keep the pressure on the English batsmen.
Yeah, and you finished off that game in it was nail-biting style. I wasn't able to watch it because I think I was on holiday, but I was following on my phone and like mashing refresh, and my heart was in my mouth just reading text commentary. I guess as a group that's involved in it, sometimes when you're involved in something, it's not until you take a step back that you realise maybe the magnitude of what you've achieved. So I wonder, did it sink in immediately in the first place, or is it something that you now look back on? And I mean, I don't think it'd be overselling it to say that you were involved in one of the greatest moments in Scottish sporting history. And do you feel that?
Probably not until the final wicket, to be honest. The moment that lives on with me, and the moment I've the most vivid memories of those days is not. It's easy to say when you've got runs, but it's not the batting side of it. It was that final wicket in the pitch invasion and the passion there was for sport in Scotland, not just cricket, but sport. Seeing people react like that because we'd played a game of cricket in a way and there was a full pitch invasion. I'd never seen that in cricket in Scotland. I mean, it was like a throwback to years ago when there was more pitch invasions, but to be involved in a moment like that probably meant more. And then the other bit that I take away from it was, I mean, we went and sat in the bar, and I was having a beer with two ex-teammates who'd been in the side when I'd very first came into as a 17-year-old cricketer, and they were just as happy. You could tell what it meant, and they were happy to sit in the bar, enjoy our success and be a part of that journey, because without the information and the help that they would have done, the players might not have developed. And they're two of the things that I take away, as much as how nice it is to actually know that I've got the 100.